Okay, today I hate to see such a pretty plant have to be chopped down, but today I am going to dig the corms, and I know it's going to make a mess, but because it's in a pot, I think it's going to be easier if I just turn it on its side and take it out of the pot. Then I don't have to cut between the bulbs or the corms. Anyways, I'm going to give that a try. Oh. Definitely a heavy one. Maybe I won't do it this way. I'm videotaping it. Oh. Thank you. Oh. I get it on the patch. I should be able to get it out. Well, maybe I can and maybe I can't. Okay. Okay. I decided that I would change out on my good slippers, my outdoor slippers. And this pot is breaking out the bottom. So I'm just gonna take it off. It was a free pot. And next year I might just plant these in the ground, so I planted them in the ground before here. But because I've rented, I never know if I'm gonna be here still the next year or not. And it's hard to plan when you're not sure if you're gonna be here or not, as far as sticking things in the ground. I know at the zoo in Denver, they have a lot of these plants. And I don't really know how they winter them. They look like they've been there for years and years and years, but because they're very big. Anyways, sorry it takes so long, but it's good to be a little more careful with razor blades. There we go. I'll set that aside. Slide it off if I can get it off. Definitely a big plant. Okay. there's some major root systems in there. I have a big old knife. It's kind of coming apart in the handle, so it reverts to a garden tool. And this is good for kind of dividing this so that I can see where the corms are. And some are big and some are small. That one's a little smaller. This one here looks like it's kind of rotten, and I don't know why that would be. I don't think it's because it's alive. I mean, growing, but it might be. Anyway, this biggest one. This was pretty huge when I planted it. And now we'll cut them down at about 6 inches or so. People are in warmer climates. Sometimes they'll cut them down. Or dig them out of the ground, and then they'll lay them aside for like 3 days and let them kind of dry and let the life kind of go back into the corm. I've usually just dug them and then set the corm somewhere where it can dry for a few days. And anyways, given me the chance to figure out well, as the corm dries, you can peel the outside layers. And that was what I think. What do you want to do? I kind of cut into the bottom of all of those bulbs, and I didn't want to do that. Anyway, So this one's just kind of anyways, I try to carefully get them out of here, and then when I'm done, clean it off a bit and cut these roots off. So I'm pretty much just down to the corner. This was a pretty big one when I planted it. That one's pretty small. Can save those pieces because they can grow some more. I'm going to pause this and grab me a little footstool to sit on. There. One right in there is kind of mushy, but they shouldn't be. They should be nice and firm like these tubers. So just do my best to get the dirt off and the tubers as big as I can. I can split them up when I'm gonna plant them. I think this pot, when I planted it in the spring, I had some little ones. So I planted a big one in the center of the pot, and then I planted a few of the smaller ones around it. I have washed it off before in the hose, but I think they keep better if I don't do that. However, it is easier to pressure wash them and get all of this dirt out of it. This great big one here, and this big one should be a pretty good sized worm over there. Kind of see the base of that one. And this leaf should go down into this bulb, and it should be a smaller one, but a good healthy one for planting too. Anyways, so I'll set this aside for a minute while I clean the others, and then I can cut some roots off to be able to see it a lot better. And then as it dries, this kind of stuff you'll peel off. And that will get you a nice clean bulb or corum to plant for next year. And it'll dry real nice. Anyway, so let's see how big the other ones are. So there's one. I guess three. A few more up there. And there was definitely a rotten one in there. It'll make good compost for another pot. As this grows, it puts up all these other young shoots, and so it'll multiply like this. Try not to break it off. It's okay when I plant them, like I said, I will take them off too. But I guess the less holes or cuts through the bulbs, I think the less chance of them getting rotting over the winter. I've managed to wrap mine just in well, I set them in a box with lots of air that can get to them clean for a few weeks until they're all dry. Well, the outside is dry. So I'll cut these roots off. This is a smaller corum, but I'll cut this off about here, and I'll let this dry, and this will kind of harden right here too, right for about an inch. So then the corum will be about this big, about 2 inches. But anyway, I'll set that in a cardboard box, like I said, in a kind of a warm, arid place, and I'll let those dry until I can peel off this outer skin like stuff, and it'll all be dry and it'll be nice and smooth. And then I will wrap them in a dry newspaper or a paper sack, and put them in a cool, dry place It's okay if there's a little moisture, but you don't want too much moisture because it'll rot. And if you let places, just sit in a damp place before this seals up, it'll be all squishy and rotten like that one was in the dirt there. Anyways, I don't know if you can see, starting to get to it. Getting there. Anyways, this oh, I want to dig holes in the bottom of it. But if I can get this dirt off. Has lots of little shoots off the sides, kind of like little half circles that are starting. And this bulb, it goes down to here, but I want to make sure that it has this right here is part of the bulb, and it'll dry down into here, and the top will dry, and then all of the extra parts of this leaves and that were coming up, they will just gradually peel off wherever they're connected in there to the top of the corm. So I don't want to cut this off too far down. Have the squishy one. Well, that was a big one. That was the original, I think. It was that big and pretty squishy. And I don't know, maybe just because the other ones are growing out of it. That's where it was attached into the main one that I planted last year. And this one is kind of growing down around it. Kind of see. It was putting off an offshoot here, but this one was growing out of the big one. And I had accidentally planted it upside down. I mean, goodness, the good Lord knows how to make things grow. But it wasn't coming up in a month or so. So I dug it up, and the main one corum was like this, and it had shoots going down like this all around, but then it was trying to turn around and come back up. So I did my best to actually turn it on its side so that the shoots that were coming out could just head for the surface. Anyways, I'm going to try really hard not to do that again, because it sure slowed down the growing process. And you know, some bulbs, I look at them and as many things as I grow in my garden, I look at a bulb and I don't know which end is up. So I hope if there's somebody else out there like that you don't feel bad and consider yourself in good company, because I can grow gardens. Man, I can grow gardens, but you'll be the world's best gardener, and if you don't know how to plant something right side up or not, it's not gonna do as good. Anyways, this is another one, and I could tell it was just kind of growing out the side, and I did accidentally break it off there and cut it off here, but this was off growing out of the side of this big bulb. So I will just cut the roots off and dry it separately. And all of the ones that I planted that were like that last year, even smaller, I planted them late this spring, but every one of them grew a nice elephant ear plant. So I put a couple of them in other pots, and I really like them. You know, by the front door and stuff, you make people come and say, "Wow, is that real?" So, anyways, here's another one. My hands are pretty big, but that one's, I think it's like, my hand's like 8 or 9 inches around. So that is actually about 10 inches around this. And like I said, up here, you don't want to cut this off right here, because the corum is still inside here. And these will peel off here, but it's still rounded, and the next leaf will dry up and it'll peel off further up and further up and further up, and then you'll find out how big it is. I would assume probably about this big, but here. There we go. This is another little one. It might be smaller than what'll really take off, but we'll save it. And this one as well. It was coming out of the rotten spot. And it might just be because that was the old original bulb and it had new life in it. Saved the new life, and the old one, it just kind of rotted away. Maybe it rotted to feed the compost the rest of it, I don't know. This one has a nice tuber out the side of it. That's nice. Nice big one. Has kind of a round one here. Button-like. We'll be able to see it as it dries. But anyway, I said, I'll get rid of those roots, and sometimes you can break things off going the opposite way that they're growing. Pretty easy. I just don't want to rip holes in it everywhere. Oh, there that one went. So this will turn into one about this big. And this one is a decent sized one. That'll dry like that, so this was new life coming off here, so it may dry up about, I don't know, about here. And I guess I'm down to my bulbs and a mess. So I'm going to grab my knife. The size of that one. Now that one is one that broke off and just was sitting in the dirt. I can keep this little button one, but I'm not sure how well it'll do. Peel off as much of this skin stuff as I can that's just loose so that it dries out better. Be better with scissors. It'll make them dull, but you can always sharpen them up by getting a little canning jar and just doing your scissors like this over the edge of the canning jar, like this. It'll sharpen your scissors right up. My grandma used to do that. She taught me that. And she lived to be a pretty, I don't know, close to 100 probably. She lived in her own house in Montana, down along the railroad tracks, and really close to there was like a grocery store, and then there was a bar on the side of it. And the building was kind of just long, and half of it was the gas station or grocery store, and the other half was the bar, and in between it was the hanging tree. And Roundup, Montana was the old cattle town where back in the old days when all the movies, they always drove their cattle up there north. They'd drive them to the town of Roundup. That's why it was called Roundup. And then they would put them on the Milwaukee train and ship them out east. Anyways, her house was right across the street from the train track, and the highway went between the two. And way back, it was one of the biggest towns in the state of Montana, but now it's one of the it's a smaller town with probably more bars than. There's a decent amount of churches too, but a lot of bars. And anyways, she lived in her own little house with no running water, or she had a little trickle of really rusty water. But she couldn't drink it. And she had an outhouse. She lived next door to a man named Tom Steen, who was the sheriff back in Jesse James' time. Anyways, she lived in that house and cooked all of her food off of a wood stove. She'd throw a little coal in there to keep the embers hot all night, or to heat the kitchen in the winter. And she had an outhouse. She did have electricity, which was nice, but I stayed with her every other night for years while I was a teenager. Keep her company at night and to help her out where she needed it. One night somebody broke into her house, and I went and told her, "Grandma, there's somebody in the kitchen." It was kind of one of those older houses. Well, it was an older house, but anyways, where you go in the kitchen door, and the next room to it, there's one door that goes into the dining room, and that room has a door for a bedroom. And straight through goes to the living room. And then there's another bedroom off of the living room, but it's just simple little house. And sorry, I have allergies to dirt, especially wet dirt, from working in fossils for years. I'm breathing all the rock dust that we ground off of them. But anyway, I told her, and she jumped up and threw open the kitchen door and hollered, "Come on in, Jesse James, I'll make you some coffee." And whoever it was, we heard a lot of footsteps running for the other door, and the door slamming. We never did see who was in the house, but I guess if they knew Jesse James, knew she wasn't afraid of him, or maybe she just thought she was a crazy person coming after him, I don't know. But it was kind of funny. It did a lot for me to not make me so afraid of, people at night and things, and I didn't worry about stuff like that. I think, to my knowledge, all the times that I was there, nobody else came into her house, but her house sat back a little back from the road, and I guess just the fact that it was right beside the highway and right beside the railroad tracks, where a whole lot of people would, hop a ride on the train for free, and then they would hop off before it got to the station. So there was probably a lot of people that shouldn't have been out there at night, either from the bar or from the train or from the highway, and it was on the edge of town. So anyway, I may rinse these off. I like having all that mud all over them, but that'll be a pretty big bulb there. And I don't need this, and I don't need that. One day later, when my grandma was not too long before she moved out. Anyway, I walked by, and her neighbor, the old sheriff, he had Alzheimer's. And I realized you could learn a lot from a person with Alzheimer's, because it seems like they revert back to a time where they felt important and needed. And they seem to just kind of go back into time. And he was, like I said, the sheriff of that town, and it was thriving during the time that he was the sheriff. But anyway, he was talking to me one day, and he said, well, I got to get over to the station because Jesse James is coming into town today, and we got to get the posses ready. And anyways, it's kind of fun, you know. It's kind of like being in your own movie or something with somebody. He's telling it like the day happened, but it was long, long ago. And so anyway, I enjoyed visiting with him and just asking him what was going on for the day, and you never knew what you were going to hear. But you could benefit anyways from letting them tell stories, because you might hear about something firsthand, like it was just happening that day, and it might have happened 80 years ago. Anyway, sorry. If I tell you stories, because I'm getting older and realizing some of those stories are kind of fun to hear for me, and what can I tell you while I'm just ripping the little roots off? So I am going to maybe pause this and just rinse these really quick. I try not to pull those off until they dry, because when they dry, then this will be part of the corum. So I don't want to pull them off too deep right here, right now. I want to let this life and energy go back down into the corum, so it'll be bigger and hard. So anyway, got one more I need to trim. There was a whole bunch of robins that were migrating through here today, and usually they're with a whole bunch of starlings from up north and cedar waxwings, and this time I never saw any. And I don't know, a couple weeks ago we had a few robins go through and a few cedar waxwings, but I haven't seen the big crowd we usually have. So I'm not really sure if they migrated yet, or if we're still due to see some cedar waxwings, or if the crab apples in our trees just weren't ready enough for them, because they usually fill up on all the crab apples. And anyway, here is my bunch of elephant ear bulbs, and I will pause it, and then I will rinse them, and then I'll give a quick shot at the end. And then, like I said, I'll just get a cardboard box with nothing else in it and just kind of spread them apart and set them in the house in a warm spot where not too hot, but where they'll dry. And then after they dry good, then we'll wrap them in newspaper and seal them up, and then I can put them in the garage as long as they're in a place where they won't freeze. Maybe enough wrapping paper around them, but I don't get it too tight so that the moisture stays in, because they can rot that way and they won't be any good. But this way I've saved them really good for the last, oh man, probably 8 years, and they've done really well. So that is how I do it. And forgive me for making a big mess, but hey, if you can't get your hands dirty when you garden, what else fun is there? And that is what I ended up with. And they will dry into nice, neat looking little corms, and then we'll take the rest of the tops off and wrap them for winter. Anyways, if you have elephant ears or canna lilies, I need to do the same thing too. But sorry it took me so long, but this is what it takes anyways for me to get them done. So maybe some people are faster at it. If they have sandy soil, it'll just fall right off of them and no big deal. Mine isn't very sandy, and it's pretty decent for being in a pot. So you have a great day, and yeah, if you're digging yours, however you do it, let me know if you have a better way, but this is how I do it, and they are ready to winter. So have a great day. Bye-bye.